tragically, I did the AI for age 2. So if you have fond memories of the terrible AI, that was me. We're 6 weeks from being done, and Microsoft comes in and they say, we need to add Koreans to this. And I'm like, we need to add Koreans to the Conqueror? And they said, yes. And I said, so the police came by and they were like threatening to arrest the Microsoft guy.
Really?
But with Age of Empires, the thing that was, so here's the fun story. So we're doing Age of Empires, and when I was working on, when I was at Chaosium, we did role-playing games. And so a major source of income for role-playing games is expansions and add-ons. They're like books of monsters, adventures, campaigns, whatever, add-ons. In fact, like the basic box of the game is like $20, and then you'll sell hundreds of bucks of the add-ons to the gamers, right? No one has just the big game. So, can you have me go somewhere else, Lincoln? Or they're not as loud? Thanks. So what happened is that we did Age of Empires, and they said, okay, what do you want to do now, Sandy? And what I was doing actually was a game called Sorceress, which is a fantasy RTS game with a plot. But what happened is they were starting to work on Age of Empires 2, and as they were working on it, they kept taking people away from my Sorcerer team. And so I literally got down to like only a core guy, and I said, hey, you know what? There's not enough people here to do Sorceress anymore. But here's my suggestion. We'll do an expansion to Age of Empires. It'll be called The Rise of Rome, and it will have Romans because they're cool, right? And it will right, because Age of Empires 2 is going to be in the Middle Ages. We'll bridge the gap. And they thought, and then Microsoft hated the idea. They said, oh no, why would anyone buy an expansion? That's totally stupid. Okay. And I said, well, we're going to do it because it's going to be really cheap to make, really, because it's only like a handful of developers, you know, and it takes only a few months.
Yeah, that's
so we came out with it, and it sold like 35% as many copies as the core game, which is gigantic.
That's a lot, yeah, especially at that time.
Right. So then the funny thing is, after, as soon as that was finished, I went on to Age 2, and I did the AI for Age 2. So if you have fond memories of the terrible AI, that was me. I did a program. I had a language I scripted for it, right? But so when we finished Age 2, then Microsoft comes and says, they were always super pompous. They say, we have learned that it's really good to have an expansion after the main game. Yeah, who taught you that? Who told you that?
That's a corporate thing in any field. Yeah, that's corporate all the way.
Right. So here's another great story about it. So we did so I said, okay, so we'll do the expansion. I said we didn't have an awesome theme like the Romans for the end of the Middle Ages, right? So I just said, well, we'll call it the Conquerors, and it will have like conquering races. So we'll have the Huns because they're awesome, and we'll have the Spanish because they're awesome, and we'll have
that was a
Aztec.
great one. One of my favorites, the Spanish Conquistador edition, was awesome.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? And so the Huns are like the start of the Middle Ages, and then the Spanish cap it off. And we said, and we'll have the Aztecs to fight against the Spanish, and then we'll have the Mayans basically for the Aztecs to have someone else to fight, and also because we already had the art for the Aztec buildings, so we'll reuse it. You know, so that was our 4 steps. So then we're 6 weeks from being done, and Microsoft comes in and they say, we need to add Koreans to this. And I'm like, we need to add Koreans to the Conqueror? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, so to the credit of the Korean nation, while they're awesome in many ways, they are not conquerors. Right. They never conquered anyone. And here's the argument. They said, StarCraft sold 3 million copies in Korea.
That's right.
And I said, and here's my counter argument. I said, there's no Koreans in StarCraft. That's not why they bought it.
That's so true, yeah.
And they didn't hear. They couldn't understand what I was saying. They said, but they bought 3 million. I said, yes, but not because there were Koreans.
It's so funny to think they were trying to pander to Koreans at a time because StarCraft? That's so funny.
And so finally they said, you have to do it. So I said, fine. So we figured out some Korean stuff. Then we got in trouble because we used the wrong model for the turtle ship. They said, no, they look like this other thing. We don't know. We look online and see different turtle ship things and pick the wrong one. And then we got in trouble because our representative in Korea, actually Microsoft's representatives. Well, what happened is that we referred to the Sea of Japan on the map of the Korean campaign as the Sea of Japan, which is its name in every country in the world except 2, North and South.
Oh, I was gonna say, what's the other one?
They call it the Sea of Korea. Okay, so and apparently it's like a super big deal.
I would imagine. Yeah.
How do we know? So the police came by and they were like threatening to arrest the Microsoft guy.
Really? Where?
Yes.
I couldn't find this anywhere online. These stories. That sounds.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't publicized, right? So we also got in trouble because apparently there's a faction. So apparently, one of the things we had the Korean we had the war between Japan and Korea as one of our campaigns when the Koreans kicked the ass of the samurai and threw them out of the country.
Yes.
We thought that was a heroic story. Yay, Korea, right? And apparently there's a faction, there were some Japanese who justified the invasion of Korea in 1905 by saying that, it's because we'd been there earlier, which is loony, right? But I mean,
war is always tricky. There's always two sides and neither side will be happy.
Right, so some Koreans were trying to pretend that invasion never happened, so those Japanese wouldn't have a case, even though they don't have a case anyway. The fact you invaded someone doesn't mean you get to own them, right? So those guys are mad at us too. I'm not sure if they were taken seriously. Well, there's other political things. One of the things we had was with Rise of Rome. Do you remember we had the Macedonians?
Yes. Well, I don't remember I don't remember that part, but I do know Macedonians in Roman history. Yes. Right.
Well, of course, they were a huge empire that was constantly battling the Romans, right?
Right.
And Pyrrhus of Ephesus. They didn't call them the Macedonians by them, but it was so in the Rise of Rome, we had Macedonians as one of the civs. And this happened at the same time that Greece was really mad at the new country of Macedonia because they had the province of Macedonia, and they were trying to say, no, Macedonia is Greek. Now, my argument was that if you go back to Alexander's time, the Greeks did not consider Macedonia part of Greece. Right, and they spoke a different language, and they hated him. But the Greeks now are like, "Oh, Alexander's our guy." So they're starting to make this huge political stink, and so they're like, "What if So my argument to them was, okay, if Macedonia is the same as Greece, you should be super happy that there's 2 Greek civilizations in the game. That's twice anyone else. But logic doesn't matter, right?
I'm so happy you guys didn't make games during Twitter times. This would have been chaos today. Like any of these disputes would have been chaos on Twitter today.
Well, the thing is that it was solved by the Greeks being even crazier than we'd imagined, because during the middle of our conflict, the Greek government decided they had to crack down on online gambling, and the best way to do that is to ban all video games. And they banned all video games all over Greece. And so suddenly, no more Greeks were talking to us about our video game.
Perfect. A problem that solved itself.
The problem solved itself.